Okay, hey guys, I'm gonna do my video. I was given fractions for Year 4 students, so here goes my video. Fractions for Level 4 students. According to the Australian curriculum, Year 4 students need to know how to count by quarters, halves and thirds, including mixed numerals, locate and represent these fractions on a number line. The prior knowledge that is expected of these students is an understanding of place value, model and represent unit fractions, recognise common uses of halves, quarters and eighths, and the ability to understand one whole can be made up of 2 halves, 3 thirds or 4 quarters. My warm-up activity is called Fraction Painter. And to ensure that students understand the difference between halves, quarters, thirds and other fractions, they will be ruling a grid which is 8 by 8. That's a little example of it. It's obviously going to be bigger than that. After the grid is made, I will read out a range of different fractions in which they will colour or circle. For example, I will tell them to circle the whole, colour a quarter, colour an eighth red, and colour a third blue. This is my example. See how I've covered coloured a quarter green, an eighth red, and a third blue, and I've actually circled the entire thing to represent a whole. It's really important for students to check their answers as well. So in this case, I'll try and get them to do 8 times 8 in their heads. If they can't do that, I'll get them to use a calculator. Then we will check, once 64 is worked out, which is the amount of little squares we have on this grid, and they will have on their grids. We will do 64 how many 4s equals 16, and was 16 squares shaded in red? No, 16 was in green, so I made a mistake there. 64 how many 4s was 16, so there should have been 16 green ones shaded. Yep. Then 64 how many 8s is 8, was 8 red ones shaded. Yes. And 64 how many 3s, which is 21.3, was 21.3 squares shaded to the best of your ability. Yes. See how we have the little kind of almost half one there? And last but not least was the whole shaded. And the whole was not shaded, instead we did a circle around the whole. Then I've got a quote from Booker: joining and renaming numbers through hands-on experience. And that's what we just did, a hands-on experience game warm-up activity. In this case, students have renamed 16 squares as a quarter, 8 squares as an eighth, 21.3 squares as a third, and all 64 squares as a whole. Now for the main activity. We will need a piece of string, a ruler, and small pieces of paper, about this big, so they can write fractions on them. Alright, bear with me, I'm just going to move the camera so you can see what I'm doing. So this is our 30 centimeter piece of string, and I'm going to do an eighth, which is there, a third, which is there, and a quarter, which is there. So that's our number line. If I want to increase difficulty, I will, bear with me, hold up. If I want to increase or decrease difficulty in the activity, I will read out or set a certain student with more difficult fractions on the number line. For example, 1/5, 1/6, 2 thirds, 3 thirds, 1 third, and even 1/8. And if I want to decrease the difficulty, I will set easier fractions such as 1 whole, half, quarter, 1/8, and 1/10. Next up, I will get the students to work in small groups to discuss how they each worked out their answers. Because as Jarvis states, learning always started with experience, and experience is always social. I'll get them to reflect and discuss with each other and also with myself. I'll ask them questions such as, what have you learnt from this lesson? What did you find difficult? What was your favourite part of the lesson? I chose this activity because I believe that it was hands-on and I thought it would be a little bit of fun for students. For if the teacher is able to use different pedagogical approaches, there exists a possibility of reaching more students in more effective ways. And that's by Gardner in 2008. The learning objective for students was for students to recognise and understand where fractions are placed on number line and for them to identify different fractions on a grid. The common misconceptions that students have are often that they make a mistake of assuming that 1/8 is bigger than 1/4 because 8 is bigger than 4. And for example, if students are asked to find 2/3 of 9 objects, often students will find 2 out of 9 instead. So they're common misconceptions. Got my references here. Yep, gotta go by the book. And last but not least, thank you for watching.